Well, it's almost time for race 2 now. The grid for this race is determined by the second fastest lap in qualifying, and once again the circuit will be shared by both the GT3 Challenge and the Porsche Club entries. Here are your commentators.
The rain has stopped here at Silverstone, but the track is still pretty damp, so tyre choice is going to be very interesting indeed. Let's have a look at the grid. It's Leighton Clark on pole position. Alongside him is Gary Marsh, but problems for Stephen Ritchie on the warm-up lap. He didn't make it out because of gearbox problems yesterday, and the start to this second race of the weekend has just got a little bit worse for him. Hopefully he'll be able to whiz round and take up his grid position, but it's Leighton Clark on pole, Gary Marsh alongside him, Mike Johnson and Paul Winter are on row 2 for the GT3s, and Peter Smallwood and Stephen Ritchie on row 4, but no Mark McAleer in the Porsche Club Championship, Ian.
No, he had that DNF yesterday, as we mentioned, and that was because he aquaplaned off the circuit at Bridge Corner, and that really precipitated, pardon the pun, the race being brought to a premature conclusion yesterday. A lot of damage to that car, unfortunately, and Mark, very much one of the regular championship runners, 5 straight wins at the start of the season at Brands and at Cadwell and at Silverstone. The race, though, about to get underway.
The lights go out, and it's a pretty sluggish start from Paul Winter. His reactions not quite up to the job. He's lost 2 positions already. There goes a third one up the inside as Bertie Carruthers makes his way through, but up at the front it's Leighton Clark who has got the best start away from Gary Marsh, and those two in fact are miles clear of Mike Johnson as they make their way down into Maggots and Beck. It's much more easy to see them today and to make out who is who. It's definitely Leighton Clark out the front in the white machine with the Dago strips, and then Gary Marsh pretty close behind him, but the track not looking too wet as we go on board with Peter Smallwood.
Absolutely. Will a dry line emerge before the end of this race? It's 25 minutes long. Peter Smallwood goes off. Well, I don't know what tyre choice he made, but possibly not the right one.
Yeah, he's getting passed by pretty much everyone. I think Mark Chilton flashing through. He stalled it as well, so he restarts the engine and then pulls off. So it's obviously, well, there's a bit of a dry line there, isn't there? But he obviously found a wet part of the circuit as he heads out onto the hangar straight. On board with Kevin Harrison, though.
That dry line emerging. We have already had a race this morning for the Mazdas. We're on board here with Kevin Harrison, who finds a little bit of damp circuit there, doesn't he? A bit of a twitch on as he's there in pursuit of race leader Mark Sumter. In third place looks to be Scott Kavanagh. Oh, and that's one of the front engine cars getting very out of shape there. The back end stepping out of Paul Follett. And you were concerned that that might be a problem yesterday in the very wet conditions, Jack. Just as much of a problem in the dry. It looks like he's going to lose a position to Peter Morris here as they go down the straight and towards Stowe Corner. Morris is going to be on the inside line, Follett on the outside, and Follett in the orange car, number 90, is going to have to give best, I'm afraid.
Peter Morris made a fairly poor start then, it seems, because he started on the second row of the grid. As he makes his way down towards the Vale, he's having to go very, very defensive indeed from Follett, although they cut back to the outside line now, so he's not too fearful of a move. Follett, though, sends a late one up the inside, but Leighton Clark is romping away at the front as he did yesterday.
I did note, Jack, that it was all the rear engine cars up ahead of Peter Morris again. On a spinner there, who's that?
That looks like it's Fraser Robertson has gone round coming through Bridge Corner, the number 6 guy you can just about make out through the fencing. But look at this lead that Leighton Clark has as he comes across the start-finish line. It's some 4 seconds over Gary Marsh. So Clark, whatever his decision with the setup, is looking to be a good one. On board with Bertie Carruthers, up behind Mike Johnson now coming through Woodcote Corner. Carruthers looking like he had a little more straight line speed. He's tucked into the slipstream as they make their way towards Copse, having a little look up the inside, but he's nowhere near close enough. Mike Johnson feeling racy because he's decided to stick his headlamps on as they come through Copse for the second time.
Carruthers doing battle with Smallwood in the Driver of the Year contest within the GT3 Cup Challenge, and yesterday Smallwood finished 1 place ahead of Carruthers, but Smallwood of course has had that spin today, and that will cost him some ground on Carruthers, should think. Meanwhile, here's a decent battle going on in the club class.
Yeah, it's Richard Bennett who's managed to make his way around Paul Follett, and now Follett coming under pressure from Kieran Brewer as they make their way out of Luffield. Brewer not quite able to get alongside the orange number 90 machine as they make their way across the start-finish straight. But here is that Harrison-Carruthers battle, I think, heading down into Stowe Corner, Ian.
I think battle might be too generous a word, to be honest, because there's quite a lot of daylight between the two cars now, and it's an awful long way back to the next car through, which I think should be number 40, which is David Fissenden. He was 5th at the end of lap number 1, and then next up Paul Winter in the number 21 car. Here's Carruthers then. See him heading down towards the Vale. taking the left-hander, and a bit more confident in using the curbs today than he would have been yesterday, I should think.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, lap times have come down considerably since yesterday as they make their way out onto what will be the start-finish straight next season. Bertie Carruthers going up through the gears. As I said in yesterday's race, he's competed in almost every round this season, one of the leading men behind the GT3 Cup Challenge. He's been supporting it all the way through. Now here's that battle we were watching earlier coming down. It does look like Richard Bennett has managed to hold off the attentions of Kieran Brewer, or to be more precise, Paul Follett has managed to hold off the attentions of Kieran Brewer as well as they come into Stowe Corner. Follett going a little bit wide, that could give Brewer a bit of an opportunity as they make their way down into the Vale.
Meanwhile, here comes Leighton Clark across the line once more. 2 laps completed then. And let's get our calendars out, see who's going to be next through. Yes, it's the number 19 car of Gary Marsh. All credit here to Leighton Clark. Top drive.
Absolutely, it's very, very impressive. Yesterday's drive in the wet was impressive, but there's all sorts of things you can do in the wet that give you a bit of an advantage, but to do it so comfortably in the dry as well is very, very impressive. And you can see it's not that damp out there, to be fair. And well, he's coming to the end of this Beggarts and Maggots complex, and Gary Marsh is hardly even at Maggots, so this really is a commanding drive, and you can't really see it being halted. And a spin there. Is that Stephen Ritchie again going round?
Not having a great weekend, is he, Stephen Ritchie? Gearbox problems yesterday, spin on the warm-up lap, and now another spin as well. And here you can see he's being passed by Kevin Harrison, who's there in 3rd position in the Porsche Club Championship battle. He's tucked in behind Scott Kavanagh in the 993 with Mark Sumpter a little bit further up the road. There you can see him at Luffield corner. So it's Sumpter leading, Kavanagh 2nd, Harrison 3rd, and this is the order that they started the race in.
Absolutely, it looks as though Harrison might have been having a little look into Brooklands before he had to avoid Stephen Ritchie's spinning car. As we come out through Woodscote, Harrison losing quite a bit of ground to Kavanagh considering how close they were. There is Stephen Ritchie getting going again, and he's sideways again just coming out of Luffield. So I wonder if and a spin there for the 39 machine of Chris Dyer as well at Luffield. So these conditions still very treacherous, even though they don't necessarily look it.
Dyer, of course, in championship contention. He's the Class 2 points leader. He does battle with Marcus Carneal, who's at the top of the Class 1 standings, although not right at the sharp end this weekend, it would seem.
Into the Beckett's and Maggots complex comes this battle once more between Paul Follett. It looks as though Kieran Brewer has got past Paul Follett actually, and they've got Richard Ellis right up behind them, who's made a pretty good start actually, because as yesterday he started in the 2nd last row of the grid. And then coming through we've got this next batch of cars, and that's Stephen Ritchie, isn't it, in the Porsche GT3 car, and he's really, really struggling out there. I wonder if he's gone out on slicks or something like that, because he is really having a torrid time keeping the car in a straight line.
As is being passed, isn't he, by the Porsche Club Championship cars as well, which should not be the case really, because the Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge cars, which is for either cars that have competed in the Porsche Carrera Cup in the recent past or could do so today. It's a non-championship series of races for these cars, and we have the invitation class as well this weekend. And that's the class in which Mike Johnson competes, and he's just ahead here of Bertie Carruthers,
who's got an excellent run coming out of Luffield, hasn't he? Really picked up the toe, or whether Johnson missed a gear, something like that, but these two have really closed in a little bit. This is almost a carbon copy of the action we saw a few laps ago, in which Johnson then pulled out quite considerably through the Maggots and Beckett's complex. So we'll see if that turns out to be the same. Carruthers seems to have more speed out of the corners. Looks like he can get the power down either a bit earlier or a bit harder. Still some spray kicking up as they make their way into the right-hander at Beckett's. And just edging away Mike Johnson as they come through this tricky section of corners, and by the time they get to the hangar straight I think Johnson will have a considerable advantage, but that's almost definitely a dry line on the final part of Beckett's now as they make their way through Trapple and out onto the hangar straight, and you can see that the gap has expanded once again.
Yeah, Johnson's the quicker car in a straight line, I would suggest. Over under the bridge he goes towards Stowe Corner, and yes, there's a big gap between them. Carruthers not really able to do anything about the car in front, but he is still crucially ahead of Peter Smallwood on the circuit, and Smallwood is the driver who races in Class 2, who made his debut here at this meeting last season, I think. Now, there is Mark Chilton in his invitation class car from the Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge, and he's doing battle with Richard Lambert, I think that was. And there is Marcus Carneal.
Yeah, going past Kevin Harrison. I was just about to say that is Marcus Carneal. They're moving up, I think, into 3rd in class overall in the Class 1 for the Porsche Club Championship. So Kevin Harrison's struggling a little bit because he's now going to come under pressure from Richard Lambert. So Harrison, who had a strong race yesterday until a spin right towards the end of the race sent him down the order, but he's struggling out there as the conditions start to dry up. Richard Lambert about to make a move on him. Harrison, no doubt, will hug the inside line as they make their way down the hangar straight. It's difficult to tell from this angle where Richard Lambert is as we come towards Stowe. He's having a little look up the inside, and Richard Lambert should be able to make that move stick. Indeed he does. Harrison considers the cutback, but it's Lambert who makes up that position behind Marcus Carneal.
Yes, so Carneal forcing himself back into contention as far as the championship is concerned by picking up the places as the race goes on. Up into the top 3 now, well, he's still got some time to make up if he's going to get with Scott Kavanagh and Mark Sumpter. Richard Lambert then up into 4th place. He's the 2006 overall champion and has just done selected rounds this season in that number 2 car, which is the Porsche 964 C2. Onto the straight comes Kevin Harrison, and yes, he's losing time, isn't he, to the car ahead of him, and this could all be down to the setup he's selected, which would have been very difficult to decide on, I would think, for this morning's race. The conditions changing every lap, one would think.
Yeah, absolutely, and you wonder if after his spin yesterday, which cost him so much, he perhaps went for a slightly conservative setup, trying to make the most of the damp conditions. Looked as though Carneal was going a little bit wide into there, but here's this follow the leader that we've been watching really all race. Bertie Carruthers never quite close enough to make a passing attempt on Mike Johnson as they make their way through Chapel Curve once more. They've got the back marker up in front, but as they dive onto the hangar straight, it's still a similar gap between them as it was the last time around. This is, of course, well, they're in different classes. Bertie Carruthers in Class 1, Mike Johnson, of course, only in the invitation class this weekend.
Yes, he's turning his way through Stowe Corner once more, and just dropping down the hill to the Vale. But this is more interesting here because we've got Mark Sumpter and Scott Kavanagh, and they're just up behind the number 95 car there as well.
Yeah, that's Peter Smallwood, isn't it, that they're coming up behind into Copse Corner. So Smallwood looks like he's running into a few troubles because the GT3 car should not be passed as it is by Mark Sumpter, the club championship leader. So I wonder if Smallwood has some issues. We saw him spin, of course, on the opening lap.
Sumpter then leading the way then in the Porsche Club Championship part of the race. He started racing about 20 years or so ago now in the Big Boys Toys Beetle Cup. He sold his Beetle to buy this car and raced it in the 1994 season. As we've said, he's been reunited with it again for this year. Took his first win in the car yesterday. Now here's Leighton Clark then in the GT3 Cup Challenge. Series of races rather than a championship, but sharing the grid with the Porsche Club cars this weekend. Runs in 3 classes. Class 1 for the 997 GT3 Cup cars, Class 2 is for the 996s, and Class 3 for normally aspirated non-GT3 Cup cars, but that class only being run for this season while the category finds its feet.
Hitting 140 miles an hour there down the hangar straight as he made his way past Mark Chilton, who is in turn coming under pressure from the number 26 machine of Peter Ursig. And Ursig makes his way past Chilton then. Oh, Chilton's still hanging on around the outside though, and we'll have the inside line down into the Vale. Now this is the closest Carruthers has been, and sideways under braking from Johnson. Is that gonna send him wide? Yes it is. Bertie Carruthers dives through. Oh, contact there perhaps. Carruthers not judging Johnson coming back onto the track quite correctly, so it looked as though that just got away from Mike Johnson under braking, and Bertie Carruthers for the first time in this race makes it past.
I think that there's a good chance that Johnson will get back ahead in fairly short order though. It's interesting to notice that Mark Chilton was struggling. I think he's actually going slower today than he was yesterday, so he's either got a problem or a big setup mistake, or he's just on completely the wrong tyres. But Chilton not really going as fast as he should be when I saw him a few moments ago. This battle then with a different perspective on it now, with Carruthers ahead and Mike Johnson behind him, but Johnson within the slipstream now. You can get a slipstream probably 6 or 7 car lengths back. He was in that kind of territory, but he decided not to make a move. He decided that discretion was the better part of valour.
Into Stowe. Oh, we got a little bit wobbly on the exit of Stowe as well, so Mike Johnson just struggling with the car at this stage in the race. Of course it's a fairly long one, a 25-minute, which means that it's a little more of a marathon than a sprint. Still by no means an endurance race like the Brit car we've also got going on this weekend. But here is our race leader then, Leighton Clark, followed by Marcus Carneal. Of course Carneal in the different class. So Clark has already passed the front runners in the Porsche Club Championship. There is Kevin Harrison. I think he's going to be a little disappointed with the pace he's showing so far, and he does seem to, let's have a look at his speed. He's still hitting 100 as he makes his way towards Maggots and Beckett's, so he doesn't look like it's pure engine power that is perhaps his problem. So he makes his way through this tricky complex of corners, so it's difficult to know what's going on with Kevin Harrison, but he's definitely struggling out there.
Absolutely, but meanwhile Carl Neal, of course, up ahead, getting into third position within the class, and he started only 9th on the grid, so that's a good rate of progress from him. Now here's Adam Dawson. This is the part of the circuit where he had that spin after finishing the race yesterday, but he's got all kinds of pressure being piled on him now by the number 72 car.
Oh, but Richard Bennett it is, and he has managed to spin onto the infield at Copse Corner. That's a rare one, isn't it? He's going to lose one position at least. I saw flash past him, and that might be the limit of his damage. But look at this traffic that they're having to try to get through. This is Bertie Carruthers and Mike Johnson again. Carruthers it is, still in front as they squeeze their way past some of the back markers. That's Malcolm Jones in the 33 car down into the right-hander. A Stowe sideways again from Mike Johnson. He's slinging that Porsche around, but still unable to find a way past Bertie Carruthers as they drop into the Vale.
Yeah, it was a very busy part of the circuit as they went down into Stowe Corner that time, wasn't it? Here is the yellow car then. Mike Johnson, the driver, looking to regain second place. Leighton Clark still leading by a long, long way from Gary Marsh. And that's Stephen Ritchie, is it?
Yeah, I was about to say, it looks like he's found a bit more pace now, Stephen Ritchie, as he makes his way, I think, back past the number 90 car of Paul Follett, because we saw him getting almost overtaken by the Club Championship cars. So Stephen Ritchie perhaps solving his problems on board with Bertie Carruthers. Into Bridge Corner now, where Mark McAleer crashed yesterday. Carruthers keeps it all in a straight line. He's going very, very defensive into Brooklands, so that suggests that Mike Johnson is not far behind. That was Priory rather. Now we're going into Brooklands. He moves across to take the apex, so Johnson not quite close enough this time around, but we've seen the power that Mike Johnson's car has in a straight line. The 996 GT3R looking very strong in a straight line, so that's where Carruthers has got to be concerned.
So Carruthers pushing on then. Woodcote Corner he goes, 100 miles an hour, leading up now to 110 miles an hour onto the straight. Power goes down even more, 120, and then he lifts off for Copse Corner, and some categories you'll take Copse flat. Not, it would seem, in the Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge though. Not
on a damp track anyway. He's coming up to make his way past some of the Club Championship cars. Who is that? Couldn't quite tell as they flash past the right hand side. Oh, this is the battle we were seeing earlier, isn't it, between Adam Dawson. So Dawson is the next man to be passed as they come through this left-hander.
Was it Richard Ellis, the next car through, possibly?
Yes, it was. So they've got past Richard Ellis, and Bertie Carruthers now makes his way past Adam Dawson and out onto the hangar straight once more. But this is a really, really good opportunity for Mike Johnson, I think, because he's tucked right up behind as they make their way onto one of the longest straights in the country.
Well, this is undoubtedly the best battle of the race. It's very spread out up front, but here comes Mike Johnson down the inside of Bertie Carruthers going into Stowe Corner. They're side by side. Carruthers still with his nose ahead. He's going to turn in first, but I think that Johnson might well get him on the exit of the corner. That slower car could well come into play as well, but no, it's Carruthers that holds on for another corner at least. They head down to the Vale, and where's the next chance going to be for Mike Johnson?
That was Peter Ursig they were making their way past, I think, and well, Mike Johnson looked nowhere near close enough going into Stowe Corner, but he was so strong on the brakes he almost made it stick, and I think if Peter Ursig hadn't been there, he'd have been able to get on the power. So slinging their way out onto the straight down to Abbey Corner they come. Johnson, is he close enough this time? He's earlier on the brake, so he's just testing the ground to see where he can make the move, but it feels a bit inevitable. On board with Bertie Carruthers.
Okay, now at the moment he's got clear track ahead of him, but will it stay that way? To Bridge Corner they go. Surely Johnson's not going to make a move there. A very daunting corner indeed, and it's going to be a great show to lose Bridge Corner once the bridge circuit is phased out, as I believe it's going to be. Through Primary they've gone towards Brooklands, and there's still, 4 car lengths between those two. Past the empty BRDC grandstand they go. It won't be empty in a few weeks' time for the Walter Hayes Trophy, I can promise you that. Right-hander now at Luffield Corner, and then towards Woodcote they will go, and inexorably the yellow car is getting closer.
out onto the start-finish straight once more. In fact, he's dropped back just a tad as they come across the line this time. That looks like they're coming up behind Fraser Robertson, perhaps, as they make their way into the right-hander at Copse Corner. Carruthers is driving. He hasn't been forced to go too defensive just yet, but he's got a poor run out of Copse Corner, and here comes Mike Johnson. It's going to be side by side with a back marker up in front. Bertie Carruthers pretty much got sandwiched there behind Fraser Robertson, had nowhere to go, and Mike Johnson is disappearing off into the sunset.
Absolutely streets ahead now, as out of the final corner comes Leighton Clark to record his second win of the weekend in the Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge. We thought it was dominant yesterday, but I have to tell you, Gary Marsh is even further behind.
He's almost double behind what he was yesterday. It was 30 seconds or so in the wet race yesterday. It's going to be more like a minute when he finally comes across the line this time. Here comes Mark Sumpter to take the Porsche Club Championship win, only just actually holding on from Scott Kavanagh behind him.
Let's have a look at the results then, and Leighton Clark finished 0.3 of a second more than a minute clear of Gary Marsh's best lap time, more than 4 seconds faster than anybody else. Quite incredible, really. Marsh second then, Johnson third, beating Carruthers in that battle. Mark Sumpter winning the Porsche Club Championship race. Scott Kavanagh second, and Marcus Carneil third, picking up useful points in the championship battle with Chris Dyer. Rich Lambert was fourth and Kevin Harrison fifth. Like Peter Smallwood finishing further back in terms of the GT3 Cup Challenge. There you see that Richard Bennett finished 17th overall. He won Class 2 as well, and that was because Chris Dyer was well down the order after his spin.
So, Leighton, congratulations on that win there. The conditions were a lot better than yesterday, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, after yesterday's race, it was really, it was really tricky. Especially it was a damp, drying track to try and choose which tyre to go on. Some were running the wet, some were running the slicks. I think the front three contenders decided to go with the wet tyres, so did we. The team made a good choice on that one eventually. I wasn't quite sure, but it paid off in the end. The first kind of 15 minutes of the race were definitely wet conditions, and then as the sun came out, the track started to dry. So it was just a battle, really, trying to manage the tyres and finish the race and just kind of hold and maintain a pace.
Well, you managed to do that. So yesterday's race, looking back, so wet, wasn't it? But you seemed to, just have the legs on everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the start of the race was as a normal, normal wet conditions. We were lapping comfortably, and then again, 15 minutes into the race, the heavens just opened. I think we did about 3 laps on just standing water everywhere, and yeah, the conditions were almost undrivable, as some of the other drivers found out, unfortunately.
Now, it's your first weekend out in the championship. What have your first impressions been? Yeah,
I mean, it's great. Everyone's very friendly. There's some good competition out there, and I think it's a brilliant championship. Definitely a good stepping stone into the Carrera Cup Series, I have to say. Giving drivers the opportunity to do the one qualifying with the 3 race weekend. If you wanted to stay under the radar, pop up into Carrera Cup and make a good impression, I'd say this is probably your best way of trying to go about it.